welcome again to another episode of Digging Deeper. It is so good to be with you as always, and I hope that you've been having a good week. I hope that things are going well for you. And we are continuing here at Lifepoint our series on Suit Up, the battle that we are in. It is the battle that is spiritual, that is unseen, that we do not always find ourselves aware of, but is happening behind the scenes nonetheless. And that Paul talks about in Ephesians chapter 6. And the instruction he gives that we've been seeing is that he tells us to put on the armor, what he calls the armor of God, these different aspects of defense and some offense, as we'll see, that helps us to wage effective war against the spiritual influences that would seek to cause us harm, that would seek to ruin us or seek to hurt us and damage us and pull us farther away ultimately from our God. And so that's what we're talking about. We're I think 3 messages into that. We've done a couple messages that were introductory, and then today I believe was the first one that we've had that was actually focused on the idea of one of those pieces of armor. And the piece that we talked about today was the piece called the belt of truth. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, and the significance of truth in our lives as those who would seek to follow Jesus. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get rolling on that. And the first questions that I always like to ask, and you can feel free to use these or not use these as you find most useful to you, is this: what did you like in the message? What did you like in the message? Obviously, to be able to answer that, you will have had to have listened to or watched the message. So the first question is, what did you like in the message? Or there's something in the message that you thought was particularly helpful, that you really appreciated in the message? Share that with your group right now. Maybe there'll be some other people that will say the same thing or put their finger on the same principle or piece of information that Matt shared. What did you like in the message? Take a moment and talk about that as a group. Okay, second question is, what did you disagree with in the message? Not always is there something in the message that you disagreed with, but oftentimes there may be something in the message that you find that you couldn't quite agree with. It didn't seem right. Maybe you have some questions about it. Maybe it's not like outright disagreement, but you just have some questions about it, and it didn't seem clear, and it didn't seem to make sense. Well, this is an excellent opportunity for you as you sit with your group members to discuss that in your group and to discuss with each other, ask that question, throw that out there, be willing to share that. And then there may be somebody else in your group who has an insight, has some help that they can give to help you understand maybe a little better what was going on there. Or maybe there's a person that in your group that had that same question. And this is a great opportunity to try to be able to address that. And maybe everybody disagreed with it. Well, that's fine. That's something you can seek as a group further clarity on or think about some more. So was there anything in the group, or what did you disagree with in the message? Take a moment, pause the video, and discuss that. All right, third question. What do you remember the most from the message? Was there something in the message that you thought was particularly memorable? Was there something in the message that really resonated with you, that you thought was something that is going to hang in there with you, that you're going to hold on to? If there was something in that category, share that with your group. Share that memorable thing with your group. Take a moment, pause the video, and discuss that as a group. Let me give you a moment to do that. All right, well, let's see here. Next, the first 2 questions that I always throw out here are questions that are meant to just break the ice, get people talking, get the discussion rolling. And so the first question is this: what is a little white lie? What is a little white lie? Now, I've got to confess to you, I was not clear on what a little white lie was until I actually looked it up. So anyway, you discuss that for a moment. You share with each other your wisdom. What is a little white lie? Take a moment and discuss that as a group. All right. Well, I had to research this because I'll tell you, I thought a little white lie just meant a lie that was about something that wasn't important, that wasn't of great consequence, that wasn't very significant, and people called that a little white lie. What I found when I looked on the internet to find what is this, the actual definition of a little white lie, what I found was that a little white lie is not just it's a lie about not just a lie about a small or unimportant matter, but it's a lie about a small or unimportant matter that someone tells in order to avoid hurting another person. Now, I never knew that second part. Okay, I never knew that second part. The little white lie was not only a lie about a small or unimportant matter, but it was a lie told to avoid hurting another person. For example, it's like, do you think that I look funny? And somebody says, oh no, you don't look funny. And maybe they're just doing that not to hurt my feelings. Or maybe somebody says, does this dress look bad on me? And the person says in response, oh no, it looks nice. And they're just saying that because they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, even though the dress looks horrible on them. Okay, so that is, those are examples of little white lies. Those are the examples of things that have fit the description of a little white lie. Now, I'd always just understood it as just a small or unimportant matter. And I guess you can, as a group, talk through what you think about those things, what you think about little white lies. I guess just the way I'm wired, I would find it very hard to deceive somebody even about something like that, because if I did, I think they would see right through me. I'm not a very good person to try to spin a yarn. If I told that somebody asked me a question and I did not respond truthfully, I think they would know it. Usually people can just see right through my guys, and so I find that's not a very effective strategy for me. But anyway, I think that we're going to talk about truth today and talk about how that affects our relationship with God and how that relates to our relationship with God. So maybe we'll get some clarity on some of those things. Second question here is it hard to discover the truth in our world today? If so, why do you think this is? Question again. Is it hard to discover the truth in our world today? If so, why do you think this is? Take a moment and discuss that as a group. All right, now I don't know which way your mind goes on this question. I'm not sure what you immediately thought about when I asked if the truth is hard to discover, but I'll tell you where I was thinking was about media particularly, because we hear so many different news stories, and of course with the internet we are overwhelmed with news stories. And a case in point today, actually, I was just looking. I'm not a person that follows news closely. I'm not a person that keeps up with the news, and part of that is just to keep my sanity. I think usually it doesn't, when I watch world news stories or even local or national news stories, usually it doesn't take me to a great emotional place. I mean, it's not an enhancer for my mood, and so I, for right or wrong, avoid that. But did I pause so you could answer this question? I hope I did. If not, pause me mid-sentence, okay? But anyway, all that to say, I avoid sometimes paying attention to what media says, whether that's on TV or radio or on the internet. And I think part of that, and this was illustrated by something I just looked at today. I did happen to research a news story today just about some of the stuff that's going on in Israel. And apparently there was a hospital that was hit in a rocket attack. And there's multiple stories, right, about who is responsible for this hospital being destroyed. I think that illustrates why I personally would say that it's very difficult to discover the truth in our world today. And that's because we get so much information, and oftentimes it's information about something to which we are not immediately privy, right? We are at the mercy of whoever is telling us these things. And so we are in a situation where we can't independently evaluate, we can't see the evidence. It's very difficult, and now I think it's even more difficult because of the way that video and pictures can be altered very, very simply and in dramatic ways. It's increasingly difficult because of technology to even understand when we're looking at what might be called evidence, that whether that is true or not. And so it is very difficult. There's just a lot of people with a lot of agendas that have a lot of different narratives that they're trying to share in our world today. And it's incredibly difficult to be able to parse that out and figure out what is true and what is false, what is real and what is Memorex. And so I think that the truth has become a more valuable commodity in a sense because it is so hard to ascertain. And there's probably other reasons for that being the case nowadays than I have mentioned, but there's just so much information out there. And one other thing I was going to say, just as a thought, I don't mean to bloviate, but sometimes just what is focused on. If you focus on a certain aspect of a person, of their character, to the exclusion of other aspects, or you focus on one aspect of a story to the exclusion of other relevant pieces of information about a story, you can conjure up and create a picture in a person's mind that is really inaccurate and imbalanced. That's another place where truth can be very difficult to reach, very difficult to apprehend in our world today. So enough about that. Those are really just meant to break the ice, but those are just me thoughts about those things. Let's look at a psalm today. I want to look at a psalm. I know that's a very different part of the Bible from Ephesians chapter 6, but I want to go to Psalm 15 because Psalm 15 talks about truth. Psalm 15 is a psalm that addresses the issue of truth in our world and more specifically addresses the effect or the impact of truth on our relationship with God. And so I want to take you there, and we'll talk about that. We can talk about the belt of truth in the armor and the suit up series, but I want to talk about, or I want us to look at here what we read about from the pen of David, a Psalm of David here in Psalm 15. Take a moment, read that Psalm 15. It is only just a handful of verses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 verses long, very short. Read it maybe in a couple different versions, and then we will read it together. Go ahead and take a moment to do that. Pause the video here. All right, Psalm 15. Let me read this to you. The psalmist writes here, O Lord, who shall sojourn in your tent? Who shall dwell on your holy hill? He who walks blamelessly and does what is right and speaks truth in his heart, who does not slander with his tongue and does no evil to his neighbor, nor takes up a reproach against his friend, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but who honors those who fear the Lord, who swears to his own hurt and does not change, who does not put out his money at interest and does not take a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things shall never be moved. So this is David writing about the person that can come near to live God. So the question here, after we read that psalm, is what does it mean to sojourn in God's tent and to dwell on His holy hill? What does it mean to sojourn in God's tent and to dwell on His holy hill? Take a moment and discuss that question. What does it mean to a sojourn in God's tent and to dwell on His holy hill? Take a moment, discuss that, and I'll be back with you in a moment. All right, so David is talking here about the prerequisites or the requirements to be near God, to be close to God, right? That's really what's going on here when he talks about sojourning in God's tent, dwelling on His holy hill. So what is His tent, first of all, when David talks about sojourning in His tent? So sojourning is to stay for a while. If you want to stay in God's tent, what in the world is God's tent? Well, before, you may know that God had a temple up till the time of Jesus, actually, as it was destroyed in 70 AD. After or during the time the New Testament was being written, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. But and then there was a temple previous to that that Solomon constructed, David's son constructed, and it was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. At any rate, you have these temples that came into play after God lived in what was called the tabernacle. Prior to the temples being constructed, God was said to live. That doesn't mean He didn't fill heaven and earth at that point, but He would localize His glory. He would be manifest in a place called the tabernacle. And this was God's tent. This is the tent that David is talking about when he says to sojourn in God's tent. Who can sojourn in God's tent? He's talking about this place where God dwelled, in a sense, where He was localized, where He manifested Himself to Israel. And so it says to dwell on His holy hill. Now, what is His holy hill? Well, His holy hill was the place upon which that tabernacle was placed. It was a place where God again was localized, where He made Himself manifest. So when he asks the question, what does it mean to sojourn in God's tent and to dwell on His holy hill? Or David asks, who can do that? He is saying, when he says to dwell, to sojourn in this place, it's to live in an intimate, close relationship with God, to be as close to God as possible. And so David answers the question, well, what does it take to do that? And we're going to see what he has to say. So the way he answers that rhetorical question, who shall sojourn in your tent? Who shall dwell on your holy hill? He answers, he says, he who walks blamelessly, does what is right, speaks truth in his heart. So the second question here is, how do we speak truth in our hearts? How do we speak truth in our hearts? Take a moment and discuss that as a group, and pause the video. All right, to speak the truth in our hearts, to speak truth in our heart is to have to speak the truth sincerely. To speak the truth sincerely. There's sometimes that people will say that they are saying the truth, but when they're saying the truth, it's really not pure, straightforward, unadulterated truth. It is truth mixed with a little bit of error, with a little bit of falsehood scrambled in there. And so what you have here is somebody that is saying that they're saying what they're saying. They're making an expression from their heart, but it is truly from their heart. When they are saying something, they are speaking truth in their heart. That means what comes out of their mouth is an accurate representation of what is in their heart. There's no window dressing, there's no alteration, there's no falsity, there's no fakery, there's no facade in front of what they are really wanting to say. They come right out with it, and they're expressive and honest and straightforward and true with what they are saying. So to speak truth in our heart is somebody who's not mixing the truth with error or telling half-truths, what we might call half-truths. They're speaking the absolute truth. Next question, why is it so important to God how we treat others? Because you'll notice a lot of that's in the psalm is centered on how we relate to others. You know, it says here in Psalm 15, he walks blamelessly, does what is right, speaks the truth in his heart, does not slander with his tongue, does no evil to his neighbor, nor takes up a reproach against his friend. And so David says that a prerequisite, another criteria for living close to God has to do with the way we treat others. Well, why is that so important? Why is that so important? Well, I think that the key principle here is that we are created in God's image, right? In the early chapters of Genesis, which Matt alluded to today, or in the message when he delivered the message on Ephesians 6 about the belt of truth, he went back to Genesis 3 and talked about the deception in the garden and how Satan brought a lie there and deceived Eve, and that this whole thing just unraveled from there because of the way they reacted to Satan's lie. Well, what that tells us, what he tells us in that passage prior to that, in those opening chapters of Genesis, is that when God created humankind, when he created man and woman, he created them in his image. And from that point, every person who's ever come into this world has been in the image of God. Now, they didn't lose the image when they sinned, but the image was marred. It was defaced as a result of sin, but it's still there. And so when we mistreat another person, whoever they are, we are treating in a bad way someone who has been created in God's very image. And that creates a distance between us and God. You have to treat people right. You can't treat God right without treating people right, okay? That is a prerequisite for being close to God. In fact, there was a lady named Dorothea Day who one time said, and I hope I'm not misquoting this because I wrote it down from memory, but we really only love God as much as the person we love the least. That's a lot to take in. We really only love God as much as the person we love the least. James, I think, even says something to that effect, that we praise God with our mouths, but then we curse people who are made in his likeness. You can't do that. It doesn't work. You can't be close to God and have a situation where you're treating people badly. Okay, so next question. Why is it, what does it mean to swear to our own hurt? You notice another criteria, he says, for being close to God in here is to swear to our own hurt. He says that in verse 4 there, I believe. Actually, there's 5 verses. I think I said there were 6. I was counting the wrong psalm. But it says here, who swears to his own hurt and does not change. Who swears to his own hurt. Well, what exactly does that mean, to swear to one's own hurt? Well, great question. To swear to a person's own hurt. Take a moment, and I'll give you a moment to discuss that. Pause the video and discuss that. All right, to swear to one's own hurt. When he promises something, a person who swears to his own hurt keeps it. Does what he says he will do, he or she will do, regardless if it's costly to him or her. When this person says that they will do something, the person that David is talking about when they say they're going to do something, they do it regardless of whether or not it costs them to keep their word. Now, I think this used to be much more prevalent. In fact, there used to be a saying that a person's word is his or her bond. Well, we've gotten away from that. You can't buy a pack of crayons practically without having to sign a contract to make sure that it'll be honest, that things will follow through, the parties will do what they said they will do. And that's really what you have in this psalm. You have David saying that the kind of person that can be close to God, the kind of person who is related rightly to God and can be in a close, intimate relationship with him, is a person who has come to the point where when they say something to someone and say they're going to do something, they make sure it gets done, even when it's costly to them, even when there's a price to be paid for them keeping their promise. So, again, truth. Truth means doing what we say we will do, and God values it very, very highly. It's very important to God. Why, and finally, that leads us to our last question here. Why is truth so important to God? Why is truth so very important to God? And we've seen that in the psalm. Why is my question. Why is that so important? Take a moment and discuss that as a group, why you think truth is so important to God. All right, well, I would say in response to this, to why is truth so important to God, is because truth is God's nature. Now, you may have never thought about that, but truth is what God is like. He is a God who is a God of truth. He keeps his promises. He is reliable. When he speaks, he fulfills it. He does what he says he will do. He's trustworthy. That's one of God's most essential nature or aspects of his character, is that he is true. He is a God of truth. And so when we are false, when we lie, when we buy into lies, when we deceive, when we don't do what we say we'll do, hurt others, whatever, then we are acting in a way contrary to the very nature of God. I think that Matt talked about this in the message, and when he referenced what Jesus said in John 14, verse 6. To his disciples, Jesus said Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You see, Jesus was the embodiment of truth. He was true through and through. He was the trustworthy one. He was the one who told people how it was. Jesus never misled anybody. He never spoke a lie. He was always speaking directly from what was in his heart, and what was in his heart was the absolute truth. You can take anything Jesus said to the bank because it is totally reliable. And so why is truth so important to God? It's so important to God because that is his nature. And we'll probably look at this in a later one of these Digging Deepers, but I'll just throw it out there that the thing that characterizes Satan more than anything else is that he is a liar. So as much as God is a God of truth, the devil is the expression of falsehood. He's the very expression, the very manifestation of lies. And so that is why truth is so important to God. Let's live lives of truth this week, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. Let me close in prayer and we'll wrap up our time. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this opportunity to be with these folks again over this video. I pray that you would help us to recognize how very valuable truth is in your estimation, and to live our lives in accordance with that truth, that we would live lives that would honor you, that would bring glory to you, because we are living lives of truth before you. We pray that you would work in our life in such a way that we would put the belt of truth on, that we would hold on to the truth, not deceive people, not be willing to give in when the truth is hard to hold on to, but that we would continue to say the things that are true. We would speak the truth from our heart. Thank you for this opportunity to be together. Thank you for sending Jesus. In his name we ask it. Amen. You have a great week, and we'll see you next time.